Ford killing their whole entire car lineup, it's very big. It's a very big surprise to many of the enthusiasts out here that actually really like Ford cars.
But this 2020, I think, are one of the cars that Ford should not be getting rid of.
What's up, guys? My name's Jeremy.
I'm Skyler.
And we are A8 Reviews. Today we have this 2020 Fusion Titanium sitting right next to us, equipped with the 2-liter EcoBoost. And I would very much love to give a very big shout out to New Holland Ford for allowing me to actually review this Fusion Titanium, and also to Ethan Eckert, one of the sales consultants at the dealership, who actually signed this thing off and gave us this very nice gave us the opportunity to use this very nice location. That it's a park here that it was in my childhood, which also set up as a beautiful background for this Fusion. Today we're going to see why we both think that the Fusion is a car that Ford absolutely is making a mistake killing off. So this Fusion here is Ford's answer to the very, very popular Honda Accord,
Toyota Camry,
as well as the Nissan Altima. Now, granted, Nissan wasn't really wanting to make a new Altima, but it's a very big nameplate, so they had to redesign it. The Honda Accord has taken over sales. The new Camry kind of looks a little bit ugly. And personally, I'd like to see if Ford still is keeping this thing fresh, because honestly, I am a very huge fan of the Fusions. And I was a Ford fan at one point in time, but now I'm more of a Hyundai fan. But this kid's got a Ford hat on, so he makes it definitely kind of match with his style. But we're going to see if Ford has actually packed the Fusion Titanium here with what it needs to be class competitive, even though it was last redesigned for 2013. So let's start off up front of the Fusion. You can see this thing had been redesigned actually a couple of times. It was first designed in 2013 with a very European and very sexy and appealing look. It got refreshed for 2017, and again it got refreshed for 2019. Like we said, this is the 2020 model, and on the optional on SE as well as SEL, but standard on titanium trims, here you have full LED headlights, high beam and low beam, which is a very nice touch.
And you also have your LED turn signals that are your DRLs,
Yep.
Also known as daytime running lights.
You also got LED fog lights down here on this black housing. Now, honestly, Ford didn't make an air curtain, which I really wish they would have, but then again, Ford's kind of a little bit behind on the design trend, but they still make very appealing cars. You see this chrome garnish as well as this chrome garnished front grille that's only on the titaniums. Down here, you got this little kind of black insert. This color is called Iconic Silver. It's a really weird color. I wish they would have just called it Ingot Silver like they have for many years. But you can also see the Ford badge is right here instead of in the grille. But you can definitely tell, I really love the front end of this Fusion. What do you think about it?
I love it.
It's really sexy. It's really appealing. I have to say, it's actually one of the most dynamic looking cars in the front end of this thing, and it's aged extremely well. So now let's go ahead and take a look at the side to see if the new Fusion here can actually keep up with segment leaders like the Honda Accord as well as the Nissan Altima and Toyota Camry. So measuring it at 192 inches in length
and a 112-inch wheelbase,
you can see that the Fusion is a pretty decent sized car. We're going to step out of the way to let you guys see some of the bodywork, but you can definitely see the Fusion still looks like a very dynamic looking car. You can see that the mirrors here are not actually housed on the actual door here because the windshield slips a lot. You'll also see that cork just like the Escape, but you can see the mirrors are housed right here. These are not power folding. You got your LED turn signal in there. So this here Fusion Titanium rides on a 19-inch machined alloy rim wrapped in
235 millimeter wide tires all the way around.
So definitely this thing should have a lot of handling prowess and all that sorts of stuff. But again, you got this huge body line here that goes from the front fender all the way up through the headlight, comes all the way back here to this taillight. Also got another body fender that comes fades away just before the taillight, but becomes prominent right here, and then another one down there. This one has a little bit of a sportier body kit because, again, this is the titanium trim. You can also see this little kind of thing here because this has a sunroof, power tilt and sliding. It's only a single pane. But here on this titanium trim, you get this chrome garnish. Honestly, with the color that this thing is, it actually sets this car off really nice. Hey, there's a ladybug. But anyway, the door handles are chrome garnished right here. They're painted in the same exact color. I really wish that Ford would have actually put chrome door handles on this thing, but honestly, with some of the other colors that they offer, it might look a little tacky. So I like that Ford just kept this little kind of simplistic little chrome strip here. But definitely the side of the Fusion looks really insane. Honestly, I do like the side of the Honda Accord better because it looks a lot more like a fastback, but you can see this does have a little bit of a sloping roofline, so that might impact rear headroom, but we will go into that later. But now let's go ahead and let's go take a look out back because that's where the Fusion definitely, I think Ford kind of needed to work a little bit more on.
Okay, for Fusions 2019 and up, they always had the chrome strips that went all the way across the back here, but on the 2020 they decided to cut it short and they extended it down to the bottom of the tail light here.
Yep, that's exactly what they did because people didn't like the chrome strip across. Personally, I don't like this. I like the chrome strip across because it actually made it look a little bit nicer. But here you can see this has full LED taillights with the turn signal, although it has an incandescent backup light. I really love the taillight design of this thing. I mean, just look at it. It looks practically exactly like an Edge,
wow,
which is actually the same car that this thing is based off of. But again, out back here is where I think Ford kind of should have styled this a little better. The rear here, this plastic piece here, there's exhaust finishers right here, and there's the exhaust tip. I'm not sure why Ford didn't just decide to completely put the exhaust tip all together, because I know that these Fusions are really notorious for making these chrome parts all black out because of all the soot from the exhaust. But definitely these exhaust tips look really, really small. But one thing's for sure, if I find a stick of truth, but one thing's for sure, these exhaust tips don't go nowhere, they're fake. They're actually finishers. The exhaust comes out just shy of the actual port here. So Ford is joining the trend of fake exhaust tips. Freaking hate it. But anyway, you got backup sensors here. You got your backup camera there as well. And up here, you have this really nice spoiler. And you know what's a very nice design touch?
Ford was actually the first one to come up with this bubbly design here on the tail lights.
And that's been present ever since 2013, and it honestly gave this thing quite a muscular appearance. But let's go ahead and talk about the cargo area. So you got 16.5 cubic foot of storage in the back here. It's kind of shallow, it's kind of narrow. Oh, sorry. But anyway, it's pretty class competitive. I'd say it's on the larger side of the class, but man, that was a pain getting out. Sorry I took your line, bro.
That's okay.
So now let's jump into the interior while I sit here and breathe super heavy. Wow. So guys, let's go ahead and jump into the 2020 Ford Fusion to see if Ford has kept up the interior styling. We're gonna first take a look at the key fob. It's the same exact key fob that every single Ford comes with. Some of the vehicles, I wish that they had some more differentiation instead of just the Ford badge. But here you got lock, unlock, your remote start, which what you do, push the lock button twice, push that button. There's a little LED indicator. It's flashing red because I'm not sure why that it won't remote start. But to turn that off, you just push that button once and it will turn itself off. Then you got your trunk open as well as your panic button. Make sure that you're pretty far away from this thing when you set the panic alarm off because Ford's horns are loud. But it's a keyless entry system. This also does not really work too much. This little red portion you can touch here to lock the door. I think Ford does a sensor behind the door. There's also this little unlock thing right here, which I'm not sure 100% why. But as you can see, the thing's not working for some unknown reason. So we have to unlock the car and get in. But you can also see there's Ford's keyless entry keypad here that's integrated into the door. And opening the door up, first things first, you can see that this interior looks really nice. It looks pretty premium, actually. But let's jump in and let's find out. So jumping into the Ford Fusion, this thing sits low to the ground. Obviously it's a typical sedan height, but shutting the door, surprisingly for it being 6 years old, it sounds relatively solid. It's got a nice solid thump to it. But anyway, now that you're in the interior of the Fusion, like I said, this thing has keyless start. So just put the key fob in the vehicle and push the start button right here to fire up the engine. Now I heard a pop and I'm not sure what it is. And of course there's a ladybug going in the interior. But there's two of them. Let's first talk about the interior materials. If you'll follow me, Skylar. It's all soft touch on this upper part of the dashboard. It's soft touch down through here. You got these meaty grab handles. Surprisingly, these little little pieces here that come back through the center console, they're actually soft touch. But you got your plastic here, plastic in there too. Coming over here, you got some accenting in the vents here. You got some silver accents opening the glove box. It's really large for the segment. It's damped, but it's not lined with felt. Honestly, it kind of requires you to hit it a little, or forcefully close it a little bit more. Coming over to the door panel, soft touch here. You got some more of that silver accenting. It's hard touch there, but you got some leather with some stitching here, as well as on the armrest. Down at the bottoms, obviously it's going to be hard touch. There's storage down here as well. Windows, they're all auto up down, which is very nice. I was not expecting Ford to do that. This titanium trim comes standard with a 12 speaker 390 watt Sony audio system. It sounds incredible, as obviously I love it. Now we're going to turn that down because of copyright. Coming over to the steering wheel, this is a 3-spoke design. It's got the kind of like a triangular pattern. I really like this steering wheel, except the thing that I have to say negative about it is that it's a little bit too thin for me. The thumb grips, I can completely bring my thumb right over my finger and still have about like 1/8, maybe 1/4 of an inch, but I kind of am nitpicking. The center hub here for the horn pad actually feels very nice. Your horn's obviously very loud. You have your cruise control sets here. You got adaptive cruise control on this one, because adaptive cruise control does come standard on all the Fusions. You got your tracks, you got your infotainment system controls there. You got 2 little track pads here, because in here the Fusion actually has 2 4.2 inch LCD screens. So if you want to move over there, Skylar, and move in closer, this one on the right is your helper screen for the infotainment system, so you can go through your entertainment, you can go through your presets and such. You got your navigation, and you also have your phone. That's pretty basic. I really don't know why Ford put that there. But coming back over to this left side of the screen, there's a lot of customization. You can see the tachometer. It's pretty quick to react. It's got a decent refresh rate. You can see the digital cluster there. You can go back to your display mode, like again, show the tachometer, show your tire pressure, your speed, your distance to empty. Then you can go back to the tachometer, which is bigger. You got your trip meters, you got your fuel economy, as well as the auto start stop, because this one does have auto start stop. You got your driver assist, because this thing is absolutely fully loaded with all the goodies. Then you can come up to your settings. You got auto engine off, which will turn it off after so long. Lighting, locks, remote start, you can set that all up. The windows, you have a remote open and close feature, which if you actually hold down the unlock button for about 3 seconds after locking the car, you should actually be able to open all the windows in the car. And you can also use the lock button here. You can also use the lock button here and hold that down for 2 seconds to close everything, which I find very nice. I couldn't demonstrate it because this thing is being weird. But practically this whole entire setup here, it's really starting to age. The graphics are a little bit crunchy, but Ford's still kind of keeping this thing around until it dies, but at least you still have a analog gauge in there. Coming over to the center stack here, this is Sync 3, 8 inches. I'm not going to go in depth with it. You guys can go check out the Expedition review up there in the cards. But we're going to go through this thing here quick. Some major differences. The navigation maps are pretty good. The screen's a little bit small, but at least things go away. They have pinch to zoom. It doesn't tilt, but it is what it is. Coming down here, you actually have dual zone climate control. Somehow on Ford's website, they said that there was rear AC. They didn't say rear AC vents. They just said rear AC. So it almost sounded like I had tri-zone climate control, but the Fusion doesn't come with it. But here on this titanium trim, you get cooled seats and heated seats, as well as a heated steering wheel. Now, these are all buttons, so the way you control it is just by buttons. But there's something missing. You may be thinking, where can you direct the flow of everything? Well, you actually have to go into the infotainment system. That is not something I prefer. I really do not like that. Ford should have had made this button just a little bit smaller, or moved it up a little bit and put the you know, thing down there. But up here's your hazard buttons, or hazard lights. Coming back to the steering wheel, it's leather wrapped, it's heated. You got paddle shifters on the back. They're plastic, but what do you expect? It's a tilt telescopic steering column. It's got a pretty darn good range of motion. The seats here, they're an 8-way power adjustable seat. The passenger has 6-way. Actually, pardon me, the seats here are 10-way power adjustable on the driver's side with 2-way lumbar, 2-person memory. But the passenger side does not have memory, and it only has 6 ways. Coming back again down here, this is where the Fusion had one of its biggest party tricks. Looky here. This is actually a pass-through because of the rotary dial shift knob, but we'll get to that in a little bit. But down here's your media hub. You have 2 USB ports and a 12 volt down here, which can also, well, the USB ports can double up to the Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. You got this storage cubby here. You got 2 decent sized cup holders, they're square. But coming back to the gear selector, this is a rotary dial shift knob. So as you can see, that's practically what happens. But watch this. Skylar, focus in on the gear shift there. It says transmission not in park, but I think that the Fusion was the first ever car to come with it that automatically goes back into park automatically, which is, I think, is pretty nice. You got an electronic parking brake down here. You have auto start stop. You don't have automatic brake hold, which I wish would be you know, standard. But coming over to the center console here, it's very long, it's very softly padded. Opening it up, you actually got a really great amount of space. I'm surprised there's a little cover here. I'm not sure where that goes. I'm not sure if that would have been a 12 volt port, but as you can see, that cover is very loose. You got a pen holder in the back here, but definitely overall the front of the Fusion here, it still is relatively nice. Oh, I forgot to mention there's a Fusion thing down here, an insignia. But definitely the Fusion is in need of a redesign. The interior has aged quite well, actually. I'm gonna say it's one of my favorite interiors. It's clean, it's simplistic, it feels very nice. Oh, I forgot to mention, see if it passes the visor test. 1, 2, 3. It fails, unfortunately. Even though it slides, there's about an inch of room there that Ford could have actually made this thing extend a lot more. On this model, you have, again, a power tilt moonroof here. Unfortunately, you don't get a panoramic sunroof. Some of the competitors offer that. You got a sunglass holder here as well. You got your microphones there too. HomeLink is integrated right here. You got an auto dimming rear view mirror. But looking over at the windshield, here's some of the one of the most unique features of this thing. The windshield wipers go in a split pattern because of how this windshield is designed. So as you can see, they wipe outward. So that means that you guys can actually buy the same windshield wiper size, because practically they're going away from each other instead of going side to side. but I find that very nice. Again, because of Ford moving that mirror down to the door, there's an auxiliary window, but I do have to say these A-pillars are really thick. They are extremely massive. I'm not sure why Ford didn't decide to kind of shrink them, considering they gave you this little kind of helper window. But sitting in the Fusion, the seats are very comfortable. I love the cooled seats. They work okay, but it is what it is. But let's go ahead and jump into the back of the Fusion, because that's, I think, honestly one of the greatest parts of this car despite its age. So jumping into the back of the Fusion, the door opening is very wide. It almost swings out 90 degrees, so I find that very nice. But again, you can see the opening's quite wide. It's kind of weird that they put this little kind of ridge there, but stepping inside, it's actually very easy. Despite the sloping roofline, it is actually really easy to step in, but you do have a very wide sill here, so that will definitely be pretty nosy for kids. But you can see I'm being 6 foot, me being 6'3", sometimes it's very challenging to find some legroom. I've still got a ton of legroom behind this driver's seat, and it's adjusted for my 6'3" figure. Putting my head the whole way back, it does brush the ceiling, but because of this sunroof here that actually tilts and comes into the body of the car, or into the roof, it will cut back on headroom. But if you guys buy a lower model, it will not be as bad. Sliding over to the second row, or the middle of the seat, it's equally as comfy, but again, I really struggle with headroom, so this sits up a little bit higher. You have to share the footwells with others, but it's very roomy. Now, coming over to the passenger side seat, where Skylar had adjusted his seat for himself all the way back in the tracks, I've got a little bit of legroom, like not even a hand's width. So the Fusion is a little bit smaller compared to the competition, where the Honda Accord, you could literally have at least maybe 3 or 4 inches of legroom left. This is probably only half an inch, but back here you got 2 air vents and a 12-volt port, LED lighting in the back. There's a toggle here to fold down the rear seats. You cannot fold them down from the cargo area, which is kind of sad, but that's what you get for being a bit old, as I have to readjust this now. You got a center armrest here, 2 cup holders. The center armrest here feels very nice. They're also leather seats. They're not heated, but we have to see something. Actually, before we see that, interior materials, soft touch back here, surprisingly. Usually Ford decides to cut costs by putting hard touch plastic here, but they definitely did cut right here, because this is actually vinyl instead of the leather stitching up front. But at least you still have this leather arm pad, plastic here. Got some storage down here, as well as your speaker cover. Closing the door and seeing if this thing passes the window test. Come on, Fusion, come on. The Fusion passes. The Fusion's window goes the whole entire way down, which is very nice. It's kind of a small window though, but I can easily see out of it. I've got a decent view. So kudos to Ford for putting the window the whole way down. But definitely headroom is a little bit tight in this thing. So definitely the Fusion is a little bit lacking as far as rear seat room. So under the hood of the Ford Fusion, Ford actually offers 5 different powertrain choices that many customers can choose from.
It's got 1 natural aspirated, 2 turbos, 1 regular hybrid, and then 1 plug-in hybrid.
That's right. But this one here that we are taking a look at today is the 2-liter turbocharged EcoBoost 4-cylinder.
It makes 245 horsepower on 93 octane.
And it makes 231 horsepower if you use just regular gas. It's also got 275 pound-foot of torque, which is a very high number for this engine, but remember, turbocharged. It's direct injected, but here's something cool about the Fusion. This engine here can come in both front-wheel drive or
all-wheel drive,
which this one is actually front-wheel drive, so that's definitely going to be a lot of fun. So this will definitely compete more with the 2-liter turbo in the Honda Accord. Now this is hooked up to a 6-speed select shift automatic transmission. It's not the same select shift that you see in the Escape and Focus and all them. Although the Focus is called the Power Shift, which I would anyway call the Power, because that is really how the transmission is. Anyway, fuel economy is quite low for the segment. If you go and opt for the front-wheel drive model, you can get up to 21, 31, and 25 mpg city, highway, and combined. But if you jump to the all-wheel drive, it drops a little bit to 20, 29, as well as 23. Curb weight for this thing, it's actually quite a pretty hefty mid-size sedan. It's 3,500 pounds, but it's kind of jam-packed into the segment. Ford says 0 to 60 in this thing would be probably nearly like about 7 seconds under. One thing's for sure, I'm really excited to see how this thing actually gets up and goes when you take this thing out. But for 2017, Ford made some very huge updates to safety. But for 2019 and 2020, they made even bigger updates. So let's go through that and let's talk about it. As I have a ladybug crawling on my sweatshirt. Hi. So you have automatic high beam headlights.
Holy those are bright as
that will turn on and off when need be if it sees cars or pedestrians. So on this Fusion here, you got blind spot, as well as rear cross traffic alert, which is very nice. So definitely if you're backing out and you're not very confident at pulling out of a parking spot in the middle of a Walmart parking lot and you're not really good at it, it'll at least save you by warning you. It won't stop for itself though. So also on this Fusion, you also have a lane keeping system that will actually put you back into your lane, but it doesn't have a lane following or lane trace, whatever they call it. So the Fusion will probably bounce you back and forth between the lines, but hey, at least it comes with lane keep assist, so kudos to Ford for that. So here in this Fusion as well, you also get automatic emergency braking, pre-collision assist with pedestrian braking. So definitely this thing will come to a stop for you and it will keep you safe in any kind of collision. Also, the Fusion here is not an IIHS top safety pick. Although it scored a good rating on both the passenger and the driver's sides in the small overlap crash test, unfortunately it earned a poor rating in the headlights because of excessive glare available on all trims. And also, I would suggest probably not having a person run out in front of you, especially a child or a crossing adult, because the Fusion received no credit for its vehicle to pedestrian front crash prevention. Even though it almost completely stopped in a collision with the adult that's parallel with the road, it unfortunately could not stop. It didn't even brake at barely anything in the crossing adult test. So definitely the Fusion's a little bit behind on that. But yeah, so let's get to the moment we've all been waiting for, driving this thing. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and take a drive in this 2-liter EcoBoost Fusion here. Okay, so what I'm gonna do here, put this thing into sport mode, put it into manual mode. I am going to, okay, so it says it's ready. I'm gonna brake torque it. And there's 60. For some unknown reason, it was showing negative times. Definitely, this thing will squeal the tires. Now, like I said, this thing is front-wheel drive, so it's fast as hell, but it's got a ton of torque steer, I'm telling you. Hustling it around some corners, there's a bit of torque steer, but again, it's front-wheel drive. I bet you the all-wheel drive will handle better. Paddle shifters. They're are pretty responsive. The transmission's smooth when shifting, even in sport mode. But what I'm gonna do, get in here, whoops, turn the traction control off. Oh God. So I'm gonna floor it here from a dead stop. And there's 60. So as you can see, it'll spin the tires through the second, it'll spin the tires pretty easy. The all-wheel drive, it'll also spin the tires.
0 to 60 was 8 seconds.
0 to 60 is 8 seconds according to this thing. Which, honestly, I think that's a little bit slow for this thing because, wow, this thing's got a ton of torque steer. That is a lot of torque steer. That's worse than the Accord. The suspension is a tiny bit firm. Feels good though. It feels very composed. You do feel some of the body, you do feel some of the vibrations coming through the body. Sorry about the shakiness. I'm using a suction cup mount. But hustle it into this corner. The Fusion remains relatively stable. Little chirp. This thing handles really good. Engine is very responsive. Let's hustle it around this corner. Despite this thing being front-wheel drive, it handles really well. The Fusion is definitely a really great handler. The only way you really feel torque steer is when you floor it off the line and you're going straight. You will really feel the steering wheel go back and forth. It's really, you know, strange. Even at higher speeds, this thing is real quick. Brakes are pretty good. Remember, this is not supposed to be a sports sedan, but I mean, driving this thing around, it's very composed, it's very comfy. The cooled seats, they're not really freezer worthy, if I want to say it that way. It's a little bit too weak, so it might be just better to call it ventilated seats. But just driving around, steering is very nice, it's very darty, it's very accurate. As soon as I turn the wheel, it goes where it needs to go. The steering feel is very nice, it's nicely weighted actually. It's not sportier because of the 2-liter. It's not a sport model. This thing is a very nice driver. You hear the suspension, but it's very, very composed. I gotta say, this is pretty comfortable. But yeah, very huge shout out again to New Holland Ford. I'm gonna give a big shout out to Ethan Eckert, as well as both Carlos Castaveda, as well as Ricky Hernandez, I think that's his last name, for allowing me to drive the Fusion as well as the Escape, which is coming very shortly. We are just about to get out of here and, you know, drive it. But man, this thing is a monster. I gotta say, although that the Accord is a bit faster than this thing in a straight line, this thing still has a lot of fun and enjoyment. But definitely, I would not go with the front-wheel drive version of this thing. Ooh. If you really want to keep the tires, yeah. But definitely, this thing is a quick monster, and honestly, the driving and the feel of this thing is the reason why I would honestly pick a Fusion over really anything else. But that Accord comes in a very, very, very close second, like not even like half a point. So let's talk about the final verdict. So guys, what do we think about the Ford Fusion? Well, this is a very great car. So, what would we rate it?
Well, on the buy it, lease it, rent it, or run it like hell scale, I would say buy it.
I would also say buy it too, because personally, Ford is making a very, very huge mistake with this Fusion. It's been selling over 150,000 sales in 2017 when Ford made the sad announcement that they're going to be getting rid of this thing. It's got a very dynamic style. Safety is really great. It's class competitive, although the class definitely is starting to pull ahead of this thing. It's got a nice interior. It's got spirited driving dynamics while also still remaining a family hauler. So definitely, Ford, what the hell are you doing by killing this thing off? I mean, this thing was probably your best car in the entire lineup, to be honest. I'm telling you, this thing is a really great car. A lot of people bought it. It's been very reliable to a lot of people. Ford, what the hell are you doing? Like, seriously, come on. But for A8 Reviews, I'm Jeremy.
I'm Skylar.
Make sure you guys like, comment, share, and subscribe. Tap that notification bell too, because then
So you can join us in following the automotive industry
one revolution at a time. Well, guys, we got a Fusion and get up and go, because this thing's we only got this thing for 3 hours.